Well, hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so one thing that we are really overdue to put in now are the parsnips. Now, parsnips should by rights be going in the ground in March, really, and obviously we're into sort of the back end of March, early part of April now. We're into May already, so obviously we're quite sort of far behind on this now. It's been a combination of sort of weather and also getting the ground prepared and stuff, and obviously other things have taken over, but I'll be planting the parsnips in exactly the same way as I did last year. This is the parsnip propagator. If you look at previous videos, you'll see this is a series of tubes that's made up of Coca-Cola bottles, so it's the middle. So if you get your Coca-Cola bottle like that, basically you cut the middle section out of that, roll it up, and then this is just a couple of pieces of plastic with holes at the top and at the bottom to hold it all together, and then at the bottom it's got some wood just to stop the earth from falling out the bottom. And all I've done is I've rolled up the Coca-Cola bottles, put them in these sort of little retaining holes, if you like, and then what I'm going to be doing is sowing on the top of each of these. I've filled them up with compost, and on the top of each of these I'm going to be sowing some parsnip seeds. Now, last year I did quite a few experiments with parsnip seeds. I chitted the seeds and I also put them straight in the ground, and I think largely it's down to the weather with parsnips, to be honest with you. In the past I've had mixed results. They're not the easiest things to germinate. They do take quite a while to germinate, but yeah, this is most certainly one surefire way of doing it. So basically what I do is I germinate them in the greenhouse in this thing, and then what I'll do is I'll transplant these outside. I'll also be putting in a couple of rows directly into the ground, and what I'll be doing is using these to fill out any spaces that possibly may fail. I'm going to be putting in 3 different types of parsnip, which is what I always do. I've got the other varieties in here. I can't remember all the varieties, to be honest with you. But this is one variety that I've got, and this is called Parsnip Gladiator F1, and this is from the King Seeds range. I'm just madly trying to shuffle through these to see what I've got in here. This is another one. This is Albion F1. That was a really good variety last year. This one was one of the more successful ones. And you know, there are quite a variety of parsnips out there. This is another one, White Gem. I didn't grow this one last year, but I've grown it before in the past. So, but what I'm going to put in here are the F1 Gladiators. And all I'm going to do is just make a small indentation in the top of each one, like I've done there, so the seed falls into the middle. Now, what I recommend with parsnips is don't touch the seed. I've had sort of mixed results with parsnip, and what you find is if you can help it, that is, try not to touch the seed, because there are sort of germs on your hands, and that will now, having said this, I'm going to find about 20 seeds coming out of here in one go. So just right, that's 1 seed in there, 2 seeds in there. What I'm going to try and do, if I can, is get 2 seeds in each one. Just by what I've done is I've opened up the seed packet like that, and I'm just tapping it with my finger just to tap them out. And about 5 have gone in there now, like that. Now all I'm going to do after I've done this is put in a little bit of compost on top. Now parsnips should be, you know, no more than a couple of no more than ½ an inch deep. Basically, I would recommend. You know, you don't want them too deep. But what is important is, as they're germinating, you need to keep them wet, but not too wet. So all I'm going to do now is, as soon as I've got them in there, that's pretty much all. I've got a couple of here that I've got loads of seeds, and so I've got no choice other than to pick them up in my hand, unfortunately. But I'm trying to touch them the least amount as possible. So I'm ending up with kind of 2 in each of the cells. And what I'll do is pull out the weaker of the 2 as it germinates. I've actually got about 3 in there. I'll get those out, put them back in the packet. It is a little bit fiddly, but if you take your time, it's well worthwhile. There's nothing better, you know. A roast dinner is not a roast dinner without parsnip, I think. It's one of them vegetables that you must have on a traditional British roast dinner on a Sunday. Right, so I've got 2 seeds in each one now, and the seeds are kind of in the middle. I don't know if you can see that, but the seeds are in the middle of each of the cells. And all I'm going to do now, actually I've got 1 seed in there. Sorry about the hang on, there's 3 there. I'm going to put 1 of them in there. So I've got 2 seeds in each one, and all I'm going to do is get a little handful of soil like that, compost. Now this is the clover compost. It's nice and fine. It's ideal for vegetables. If you're going to pot stuff up for any length of time, it's not got a lot of nutrient in it, so you may need to sweeten it up a bit if you're going to pot something up that's going to last a year or so. But most certainly for vegetables where you just want a few months or a few weeks of growing in there before you plant them out, this stuff is literally the best on the market in my estimation. So I'm just putting, as I say, just a handful of soil in each one. As soon as I've done that, all I need to do now is give this a good watering, so the water soaks all the way through. And then what I can do then is just leave this in a warm spot in the greenhouse, and then these will germinate quite merrily. Now last year I had quite a lot of success out of this. Everyone basically germinated. Okay, so it's time to put the parsnips in, and as you know I'm putting 3 varieties in. This is the Albion F1 from Thompson & Morgan. I'm putting in the F1 Gladiator from King Seeds, and I'm putting the White Gem in from Mr. Fothergill. So I'm going to put all the seeds in the 2 rows. I'm putting 2 rows in all together. And you saw on the previous video that basically I've got some in the greenhouse going anyway. But all you need to do is dig the ground really fine, and what I suggest you do is dig the ground just before you put them in. And then with your hand like that, just go up the line. I've got a piece of string here so I know where I'm going. And then make a drill about sort of 2 inches or so deep. And then without touching the seeds, what I'm going to do is just show you on this bit here, then I'll continue to do the rest. What you need to do is make the seed packet look like that, and then just tap them in, going along the row like that. And what you want is a seed every few inches like that. Now I can just put those in there. Now all you need to do now is get some of the lumps of soil that you've got and sprinkle over. Now this ground's a little bit wetter because we had quite a bit of rain yesterday, but try, as I say, try not to touch the seed with your hand. I find you get a lot more success just by putting the seed in without touching it, and then sprinkling the soil on like that on the top. So what you should end up with is like you don't completely fill in the drill, like the groove that you've made. So what you can actually do is tell where the seeds are. So you're covering the seeds with about 1 inch of soil, finely broken up like that. And then as soon as you've done this, obviously I'm going to do the rest of the row all the way along, and I've got a row just to the right here. I will just give them a quick water, and what that will do is just bed them in, make sure that the seeds are in contact with the soil, and then I shan't water them again unless it gets really dry, and I'll leave them to germinate. Okay, we'll just catch up with some of the comments that have come over in the last couple of weeks or so, because I've not done some comments for a while, I know. But the first one comes from Grumpy Poo, and basically saying, do onions bolt together? Now, onions, there is basically a number of reasons why onions will bolt. The main ones are either the onions are getting stressed, which is typically lack of water, so that they've gone through a dry period, or sometimes it's checked. That's another term for it. Or if the next trigger is daylight, so when the amount of daylight is reducing, i.e. it's becoming sort of to the back end of the year when the days shorten, that's another trigger. And the other trigger is a cold spell. Now with onions, those are the things that you need to consider. So obviously, the amount of light that you've got isn't easily controlled, and most certainly frost and that in the open ground, you can't control that. One thing you can control is water. So what I would suggest is make sure that your onions are always well watered. They don't, they're not allowed to run dry, and your onions won't bolt. Now, if an onion bolts, there's no reason to think that the rest of them will bolt as well. There's no reason, if one of my onions do bolt, and I have had them in the past where they bolted, I've just taken them out and put another one in, or just taken them out, because as soon as they start to bolt, there's nothing you can do. So you can't store them or dry them or anything like that. So what I always do is if they bolt, I pull them out. If they're big enough to eat, I use them in the kitchen. If not, I just put them on the compost heap. But yeah, those are the reasons why onions will bolt. If one onion bolts, there's no reason why it'll make the others round it bolt. So don't be too worried about that. There's no reason why, if an onion bolts, you can't just leave it where it is. It's not going to cause any problem. What you can do is slow the process down by, when it bolts, it'll send up a central shoot, which is normally taller than the rest of the onion, and on the top of it, you'll get like a little sort of bulb of, like a little flower thing on the top where you get the seeds forming. What you can do is remove that, which will slow it down. But as I say, as soon as an onion's bolted, there's no way you can store it or anything, so you may as well just use it or just discard it. The next comment from Pete's Kitchen Garden, and I did actually respond to this on the comment page, but he was saying he's had a reasonable amount of problems with cats and stuff like that. So if he digs a part of his ground, and puts seeds in or wherever, the cats come in and scratch about and use it as a toilet. So the things you can do to sort of repel cats, there are obvious things you can do. There's like a plug-in high-pitched sound generator, if you like, for want of a better term, like an ultrasonic type thing, and you can put that in and that will deter cats. However, having said that, I wouldn't recommend it because it's not fair to the cats. What you want to do is, I think there's no reason for cats not to be there, but obviously if they're causing damage, that's what you want to stop. So what you can do, one of the easiest ways of doing this is if you've got a freshly dug piece of ground and you put seed in or whatever, just put some net over the top of it. It doesn't have to be particularly high, just put a few sticks in and then stretch some net over the top. And what that will do is that'll be enough to deter any cats from going onto it. The other thing you can do is you can do it from scent, and the easiest way of doing that is to put sort of line droppings or stuff on the ground. Not easy to get hold of, I know, but you can do that. Or obviously the third obvious way of doing it is to put a fence around anything that you're doing. Obviously if you've got tunnels like I've got, obviously cats can't get in there, so you're not going to have the problem. So sort of net tunnels and stuff like that are obviously going to deter a whole manner of things, cats included. But if you've got stuff in the open ground and cats are scratching in there, just put a net over there. Now, the one thing you can say is cats are by nature creatures of habit. So if a cat goes somewhere to the toilet, what it will do is it'll tend to keep repeating and coming back to the same area. So if you stop a cat once from doing it, it typically won't try again to do it. So hopefully, that'll be some pointers to try and stop the cats. The next one comes from Slasher, and he says when to put leeks out. You can basically put them out now. There's no reason why. Things like onions, leeks, garlic and stuff like that, they're all reasonably resistant to frost and stuff like that. There's no reason why it can damage. So if you've got leeks, as I said in the previous video, if you've got leeks kind of that big, they're about 9 inches tall, and they're about sort of 4 millimeters across, there's no reason why you can't put them out. I'm going to hang on a little bit because I'm not quite sure where the leeks are going to go in my plot quite yet, and leeks will go pretty much anywhere, so I'm going to put those in a couple of weeks when I've decided where everything else is going to go. But yeah, there's no reason why this time of year you can't put them in. Most certainly what you don't want to do is let them get pot bound, because if they get pot bound it'll stunt the growth and then they won't grow particularly well. So whilst they're still growing strong like these are, get them out. If you are if you are got them in a pot and they are starting to get pot bound, what I would suggest you do, and you haven't decided where to put them or you haven't got the ground dug or whatever, is take them out of the pot, split them up as best you can. Not split them up into sort of individual ones, but split them up into like clumps of of leeks, and then just bob them in a bit of ground outside, and they'll stay like that. They'll grow on there for another couple of months. There are a few gardeners that I know that actually do that. They'll start them off in a pot. As soon as they get to kind of that big or even smaller, what they'll do is they'll transfer them outside and just make a short row somewhere, and only like 2 or 3 foot long, and they'll just bob them all in there, and then leave them there for a month or so, and then as soon as they've been in there, then they'll sort of plant them out. But yeah, there's no reason why you can't put leeks out this time of year. Next comment comes from Sam Williamson, and she was saying how to make chilies hot. Again, I've put some comments on the page, but with chilies, you've got to think about their natural sort of habitat. Now, chilies obviously grow in sort of warmer climates, a lot more sun. So to get hot chilies, what you need is plenty of sun, plenty of warmth, plenty of water, and most certainly as the chili grows, the actual chili will grow, and then it won't be particularly hot. And then basically what you need to do is ripen the chili, and as the chili ripens, so in the last few weeks or a month or so of it being on the plant, that's where it develops its heat. So what you need to do is leave it on the plant as long as you can. As soon as the plant obviously starts to sort of die back, or the chilies are obviously ripe, then that's the time to pick them. If you have grown chilies in the past and you've picked them and they're not particularly hot, that's normally a sign that you've picked them too early. You need to leave them on the plant to ripen properly, and that's where the heat comes from. The next one, just one more comment. Chilies that you grow in this country will predominantly be less strong than ones that you buy that have been grown in other countries. So don't expect to get chilies that are too strong that are grown in this country. A lot of the shops and the restaurants and stuff like that, they do actually buy the chilies in from other countries because they're better grown in other countries than the UK. Next one comes from DTCB67, and a really good tip on there, and thanks for your tip. Basically, they were saying that they also grow ginger like I do, and they were saying that the ginger that you buy in a shop has been treated with some chemical or other to prevent it from throwing out the shoots. So what they recommend is when you buy the ginger from the shop, wash it, give it a good wash. Don't scrub it, but sort of give it a good wash and get this chemical off, and then dry it out, and then sort of let it grow. And apparently that's a bit more successful that way. So as I say, if mine hasn't started to throw any shoots out in the next week or so, what I'll do is I'll give mine a wash and see if that improves it. Next one comes from Brian Hubry, and he was saying from a comment last time, somebody was asking me, sorry I can't remember the name now, somebody was asking me about taking cuttings from a raspberry, and he was saying air layering raspberries is the best way to do it. Now there's a number of ways you can do that. Basically what you do is you put the stalk and sort of lay it on the ground and pin it down, and then that'll throw some roots out that way. Or what you can do is put a bag on the actual shoot with some compost in there, and then it'll start to throw shoots out of there. Then you can cut it off, and then you've basically got a separate plant. That's basically what sort of air layering is, if you like. Next comment comes from Mick Watson and Credenza1 about the wood chip comment I put out last time. Wood chip is really good. The point I wanted to make, really, I've been read your comments, is wood chip is really good for the ground. It's a fantastic source of carbon for the ground. It will increase all of the sort of the goodness in the ground, and obviously the sort of the microorganisms and stuff like that that are in the ground, which are really good for the plants, will feed off the wood chip and straw and everything else from the ground. The only downside is, as I explained last time, it will take the nitrogen out of the ground. So what you need to do is put back into the ground the nitrogen. One thing I didn't mention last time, the way I do it is I put coffee down. So if I put wood chip or straw or anything like that, I always put a load of ground coffee in. The other thing you can do, if you're lucky enough to be in a place where you can get lots of grass cuttings, so people who mow lawns, the grass cuttings, they're also just as good. And if you mix the wood chip 50-50 with grass cuttings, there is sufficient nitrogen in there also to to take to add the nitrogen back in, if you like. if the wood chips, the other comment I just want to quickly say is if the wood chips on the top of the ground and it's dry, what that will do is it will keep the ground underneath moist, and it won't typically take too much nitrogen out of the ground, and it'll stay. It won't rot too quickly. If you dig the wood chip into the ground, that's where it gets wet, and that's where the bacteria will start, and that's where it'll take the nitrogen. So if the wood chip's on the top and you're using it as a mulch, it won't take too much nitrogen out of the ground. It'll just take a little bit. But if it's when you dig it in the ground, that's when you need to put the nitrogen on. So, you know, another quick tip. Next one comes from Dave Rorks, and he was saying about chicken manure, and he was saying that I use it neat out of the I use it neat out the chicken, so I basically clean the chickens out and put it straight onto the allotment. I don't rot it down as such. And Dave's dead right, that's exactly what I do. But what I do is I don't use too much of it. Chicken manure, likewise with pigeon and stuff like that, is quite strong, and you can potentially sort of over enrich the ground, and basically you'll burn plants by doing that. Now what I tend to do is with my chickens is I'll put lots of straw in there, and I'll clean them out quite regularly, so there's not that much sort of chicken manure in there, if you like. It's predominantly straw, so it is quite weak that way. So really what I'm adding to the ground is straw with some chicken manure in there as well. Now if you buy chicken manure, which I have in the past, it is really rich, and you most certainly do need to sort of let it rot down and sort of start to decompose before you put it on the garden. Now if you buy it from a farm or from obviously a chicken farm or whatever, it is really strong, and you need to be careful with it. Now chicken manure is most certainly acidic, and one thing you can do to sort of counteract the acidity of it is by mixing in something that's obviously alkali. Things that are alkali are things that contain lime or that kind of stuff. So to stop the ground from getting too irrigaceous or too acidic, if you also buy at the same time spent mushroom compost, and this is reasonably regular, it's reasonably easy to get hold of. There's typically adverts in papers and stuff, and if you most certainly live near a mushroom farm, they do sell the spent mushroom compost, and what that is basically composted vegetable matter, but there is typically quite a lot of lime in there. So if you mix the chicken manure with the spent mushroom compost, the lime and the acid will obviously counteract each other, and you'll end up with a more neutral stuff to put on your ground. So that's one other tip you can do, but with most things, it's a balancing act. What you need to do is think to yourself, what am I putting in the ground? What effect will that have? And what do I need potentially to do to counteract any sort of harmful factors of what you're doing? So chicken manure is acidic. If you put lots of it on the ground will typically become acidic. If that's the case, what you need to do is put something on there which is alkali. You can put lime on, or you can put spent mushroom compost. Also, what you need to think about is the vegetables or the plants that you're going to grow in that ground. Now, some plants thrive on acidic ground. A lot of flowers love irrigaceous soil conditions. Things like rhododendrons, roses, stuff like that. They like acidic soil, which is why you should always water roses and stuff with tea, because tea's acidic, or rhododendrons and stuff. Other plants like alkali conditions, and plants that like that, things like brassicas. So on your vegetable plot, what I wouldn't do is put chicken manure on the bit of ground that I'm about to put brassicas into, because brassicas like alkali soil. So if anything, if you're putting brassicas in, if anything, you want to lime the ground to increase the pH or make it more alkaline, so that you've got the right conditions for the brassicas. So it's all a balancing act. But coming back to Dave's comment, my chicken manure is not that strong, so I use it sparingly, and it's not that strong, so I put it straight onto the ground. I have in the past put it in the black bins to compost it down a little bit, but because it's not that strong, it's not that wet, it doesn't tend to rot down that much anyway. So I just tend to put it straight onto the allotment to obviously get it out of the way. Right, the next comment comes from Hannah Daniel, and this was a really nice comment. Thank you, Hannah. Hannah's in Malaysia, and British people are always complaining about the weather and saying, oh, you know, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too wet and all that, because we get quite varied weather. And it was really refreshing to hear this comment from Hannah, and she was saying that she also grows ginger, and one tip that she got was I said to keep the ginger as complete as possible, or at least that's what I was intending to do. And she said she grows ginger all the time, and all she does is wait for it to shoot, and then she takes the shoots off and plants the shoots. She doesn't leave it actually on the bulb, and then she uses the bulb for cooking. So yeah, obviously she grows quite a lot of ginger bean in Malaysia. I'll potentially try that if I've got some roots on there. I'll most certainly give that a go. The next thing she said is to see if you can try and grow turmeric. Now, turmeric in the UK is typically like a yellow powder, but turmeric is really good for you. I haven't actually seen fresh turmeric ever, so I'm not quite sure if I can get that. But what I will do is have a look. Maybe I'm possibly too late for this year, but I'll try and grow that in the future. So that's something I can potentially try. But the comment that was really nice from Hannah was she was saying that because of the weather that she's got in Malaysia, she said she's really jealous of people who live in Britain because she can't grow things like kale and chard and peas and stuff like that. Where on the opposite hand, we're always jealous that we can't grow things like sort of ginger and sort of turmeric and all them more sort of exotic plants, or at least exotic to us. But she was saying she can't grow kale and chard and stuff like that, which is commonplace for us. So it just goes to show that we're not all in the same boat. Different people have different conditions and can grow different crops easily, and we struggle to do others as well. So thank you, Hannah, for your comments. I really appreciated that one. The next one comes from Liz from Little Urban House Homestead, and she was saying that she's interested in doing a wormery, and how do you separate the worms? She wants to compost the worm drills from the wormery afterwards. Now, this one's quite easy, to be honest with you. There are a number of ways you can get the worms out. So obviously after the wormery's been sort of filled and you want to get the worms back out, if the worms stay in the ground, it's not a problem. They will stay in there and they'll do their job. So you haven't got to get absolutely every worm out. But there are a few different ways you can get the worms out. One by using a riddle, which is basically like a sieve, if you like, which is basically round. You can put the compost in there, and you can sort of shake it out. The earth will fall through, leaving the worms in there. Then you put the worms back in afterwards. That's one way of doing it. But the other way is comes from birds. If you see birds, they ever sort of land on the ground, and they'll sort of pat the feet on the ground like this, and what they're doing is they're imitating rainfall, and the worms will come out of the ground for that. So if you want a quick and easy way of getting the worms out, what I would suggest is get your watering can with the rose on, and take the top off your wormery and water the wormery, and the sound of the water droplets on the top will encourage the worms to come to the top of the compost that's in there. And what you can do then is basically just scoop them all off with your hand, put them in a tub, and as long as you've got a reasonable amount, you can start the wormery off again, because they will multiply in there and sort of fill it again with worms if you want. So you haven't got to get every single worm out, don't worry about that. But the other way you can do it, which is a little bit more extreme, is actually flood the wormery. And I wouldn't suggest you stop taking the fluid off. What I would suggest, because it could potentially get toxic in there, is fill it with water, or part fill it with water. And what that will do is encourage the worms to come to the top, because obviously the worms will drown in the water. So they'll come up to the top, then you can take off the top layer with all the worms in, and then just drain it off, let it dry off, and then obviously use the contents of that, and then just put the worms back in, with some of the compost that you've obviously taken off of them into the new set. So there's numbers of ways that you can get the worms out. You can either riddle them out with a sieve or something, or you can just use water, sprinkle it on, and that should encourage them to come up to the top, or actually flood it, and that will sort of bring them to the top as well. But that's basically the best way of getting worms out of a wormery. So I hope this episode has been of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions you've got below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Little Garden.